For this session, I wrote 34 words. For this session, I wrote 122 words. For this session, I wrote 31 words, and I am officially past the 30K word count mark. I have officially crossed the 30,000 word count mark. This isn't my first time crossing that threshold. However, this is the most exciting one for me. To give a bit of context, I started this writing journey in the genre of fiction sometime last June, July. I started out challenging myself to write 1,000 words every single day over 90 days. At around the midpoint of that challenge, I was almost at 40,000 words. I realized that what I was writing was not what I wanted to really write. And so I made a monumental pivot. I cut out about 38,000 words and I began again. And I changed up my process in that pivot. I realized that writing 1,000 words every single day was extremely aggressive for me, giving me no room to live life, to breathe, to read, to do anything toward enjoyment. But it was a necessary part of my journey, and in having had out those 38,000 words, it really added to my writing skill, and it really showed me what I wanted to be writing instead. Making that cut felt so terrifying at first, but I'm so glad I trusted my intuition in that, because where I am now is at a far better and different place than where I began. In that cut, I made massive changes to my process. I kept on writing every single day, but instead of setting any time limit or word count limit, I decided to write intuitively. I would start and then I would stop at a high point. And the first high point is where I would stop. I wouldn't try to extend more than that. I have experimented with trying to stretch myself a little bit and attain a second high point before stopping a session, but I quickly realized that that wasn't working for me. It added more strain than it was beneficial. And so I have been training myself to exercise discipline in that regard, to stop at that first high point and leave my manuscript be until the next session, the very next day. In the additional time I have, now that I'm no longer killing myself over a forced 1,000 words every single day, I use that time to read and curate my reading. I study and I spend a lot of time contemplating new ideas that are not necessarily directly related to my manuscript. And really, once I'm done with a session for my manuscript, I try to put it out of my mind so that I'm creating as much space around it as I can. This is for my sanity, for my mental health, so that I can think clearly about what I'm doing and also just the other things about my life, because I don't think that the right life should take away from all those other wonderful aspects of living. I've realized that ultimately in writing, sustainability is the most important factor. And if I try to force acceleration or if I am impatient with it, then writing will get the best of me and I will not survive through a completed manuscript. I want to share with you a sample of my manuscript. We live in fragments and fool ourselves that life is whole because we are alive. But while living, we are rather the image of incompletion. It is death which finishes and assembles us to aggregate. Until then, knowledge remains indeterminate, conclusions hasty and stillborn, and life is to instruct upon arrogance, which is thinking that abuses death in consideration. To treat love as great or as base makes a difference of man or God. From God's point of view, love is man's invention, who requires the idea of it for reassurance, but God, who is without mortality, who exists on death's side of the equation, who does not live because he is already dead, has no need for faith, nor whatever descends from it, such as hope or love. There is no meaning except that which we install, and the paths which we derive meaning are few. From family, society, art, history, study, solitude, and of these options, solitude is closest to honest. It contends against a single opponent, that of self's anxiety. The alternatives are besieged with antagonists that censor candor and imagination. Honesty, a circumspect and fragile construct, is inherently incompatible with multitudes. An audience may pressurize confession, but betrayed disclosure comes with clause, that of anomalies lurking in depths of secrecy, dreams, and reveries. People are rarely honest with themselves. Though others' eyes may prize accountability, explanation, or guilt admission, answer produced in response to imputation is artificial by demanded condition. An answer procured in such expectation is oblique to the natural prejudice present in peoples without perfect consensus in language. Volunteered vulnerability publicly given seems to tender hope, stoke stagnant blood, inspire credence and virtue. Nonetheless, it is a curated exposure, which is a pose, which impugns the integrity it imitates, which, however heartfelt, becomes the shadow of honesty in the act of its articulation toward another human being. It is genuine only by belief, never an embodiment. For the moment it is claimed by words, it is disowned by them. I am going to get to my writing session in a little bit, and once I have that done, I will add that clip at the end. For this session, I wrote 77 words, and my month's total word count is 1,931 words.